So I'm actually here with a number of young women from Northeastern who are undergraduates, graduates, and doctoral students. And several of you mentioned having families. And I'm curious how you balanced your successful careers with being a mother and having a family.
You know, one of these times somebody should actually ask the family.
That's great.
You know, to be less flippant in the answer, I kind of gave up thinking about a balanced life and recognized life would be very unbalanced. And I tried to sort of unbalance it enough in both directions. So I try, you know, to really, when I can, be present, be fully present, and you know, I take off time to go with my kids. They're teenagers now, so it's getting to the point where I have to actually stop, but go to the doctor. Right? I make it to, in fact, I missed one annual wellness visit, and I was so crazed about it, I was calling in on I made them call me from the doctor's office. I could talk to the doctor over the phone. I mean, sometimes you do silly things, but I'll be at the. I remember negotiating for the acquisition of Millenium, and we had a family vacation plan. I was like, well, I'm not giving that up. So, you know, I'd get up at 5 a.m. in Colorado where we were skiing, and I'd be on the phone, and we'd do things. And, you know, sometimes I'd have to miss the afternoon of skiing to go get, you know, documents and be reviewing them. But I'd prefer to fit work and life together than try and have, you know, I'm at work and then I'm at home, because I just don't necessarily think that's doable today. And, you know, the family I don't know that they enjoy the work I do. Let me try and get back to reality. But they really are proud, I think, of the work they do. My sons, 17 and 15, have grown up with, you know, through the launch of a medicine like Blevac, you know, which is a launch I worked on at Novartis, seeing and knowing patients who've had multiple myeloma or chronic myelogenous leukemia who've been helped by the drug, and as they became more sentient beings, they understand more about, gee, you know, what does this work mean? And I think that's an important thing for them to see. Other ladies who...
So I agree. I've never liked the word work-life balance, because work is a very important part of all of our lives if we choose to work. So I think there is a work-non-work balance. And what I think I finally came to terms with is that there are just trade-offs. And I think if I did either exclusively, I wouldn't have been happy and wouldn't have been good. But there are trade-offs. And I think you just have to recognize it is hard to do both. There really are times when you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to drop, you know, big balls, and you have to figure out which are the ones that you can drop, and which are the ones that it's important that you not drop. And much like we've talked a lot about team at work, I have a team at home is hugely important. So I'm very fortunate to have a very supportive husband. We have 4 children, and we were both, throughout raising them, working and balancing, and we really took that seriously in terms of having a role. I'll also say one of the things that really helped me a lot was I happen to live in a neighborhood where there are a number of just absolutely incredibly talented women who have chosen to stay home. And they are part of my team at home. Like they just watch out. There are many examples over the years where, because I wasn't there all day, they would highlight things for me that I didn't know were happening. So, you know, we had European au pairs for many years, and this was the first cultural experience for them in the U.S. And I remember when our oldest daughter was, you know, maybe in 2nd or 3rd grade, that, you know, one of the mothers came and said, do you know, it's very typical for kids to have play dates after school, and your kids are the only ones who get off the bus and go with the au pair to go home. And you really should. It's the playdates don't usually at that age get coordinated by the kids; they get coordinated by the mothers. So you really ought to call and schedule them and arrange for them. But I would never have known. My kids would have gone through high school without ever having had a playdate. So I think that having that connectivity with your community, even when you're not there all the time, is important. I think it's very unfortunate because I think there is sometimes a little bit of resentment that builds up between women who are working and women who are home, and I think that's just a shame, because I have to say these friends of mine who are, I live in Wayland, they're really involved in town politics and school committee and selectmen. And so while I'm not there during the day, like I spent the last 2 weekends on the street corner holding signs for them for the election. So while you're not there from work days, there are always things that you can do as part of any natural relationship where, you can help each other out. But I would, particularly if no one of, like either, a parent is home, or if you're a single parent, just make sure you have people that you can rely on who are within 2 minutes of where your kids are all the time, because that comes in handy.
So I have a 25-year-old and a 28-year-old who are actually very successful, and I wish I hadn't worried about them as much. All those years that I was balancing, and I think Deborah said something very insightful, which is, and there's a lot of written about it now, but back then I didn't realize I was living in the moment. And by that I mean when I was with them, I was with them. I traveled a lot internationally, and so there were often times I was in Singapore or Japan, but I always set my clock and I called them. I had in my calendar things like math test. Because when you're in Singapore, you're not going to remember your son has a math test that he was studying with and was very nervous about. But if I had in my calendar, when I'd call, I'd be able to say, how'd the math test go? So we always felt connected. And now as they're older, they look back. I think they're very proud of what I've done. I mentor them. I mentor their friends. My son signed me up as a professional mentor now. I'm noticing I'm slotting in calls at 8 o'clock at night for his friends. But I tell many mothers, young mothers, that, if I had only known to worry less, because frankly, you're a good role model, and, you're balancing a career, and you'll be there for the important things for them, and it'll all end up okay.